Hello and welcome to the Impact Room. I'm Michelle Ansell, Managing Partner at Douglas Jackson, a high-end retained search consultant exclusively focused on consumer-centric business, delivering diverse, impactful leadership. Today, I am absolutely delighted to be joined in the Impact Room by someone who I've been connected to long before my current career and with serving the consumer-centric industry. So it's Ann-Marie Stagg. Ann-Marie has over 20 years working for blue chip organisations such as the AA, Scottish Power, United Utilities, Brakes and the Co-op Financial Services. She was Chief Executive of the CCMA, which is now in its 27th year, and Ann-Marie set up the UK National Contact Centre Awards, which recently celebrated its 25th anniversary. She also took over the European Contact Centre and Customer Service Awards for the last 6 years and breathed new life into it, making it now the largest awards event for our industry. Ann-Marie announced her retirement from the industry last year after 30 years serving our markets. And so I'm delighted to bring Ann-Marie to you to share some of the interests and opportunities she might have for you. So hi Ann-Marie, how are you?
Hi Michelle, yeah, really good, thank you, good to see you.
Yeah, you too, and thank you so much for joining us today. So you've recently retired as the Chief Executive at the CCMA then. How on earth are you spending your time?
Yeah, an interesting time to choose to retire, as you can imagine. Yeah, I mean, I guess I was kind of quite busy to start with, handing over the business to Lee Hopwood, who's now got both those award programs and the CCMA, but quite quickly settled into putting my feet up, which was quite nice. But yeah, the lockdowns, I guess, just changed it completely because my plans were absolutely about travelling. Anyone that knows that I love my travel, so I've got some great travel plans sorted out, and I think like most people, I ended up doing a fair bit of decorating and all sorts of crazy house jobs, which are incredibly dull. I did say to myself when I was going to retire that I would really focus on my health and getting fit. And all my friends said, "You'll never do it, Ann-Marie, you'll just go for lunch with everybody." And I kind of thought, oh God, yeah, that's true. But actually, lockdowns helped me there because I've just 100% focused on getting my fitness levels back and eating well and all of that great stuff. So yeah, my retirement so far has been very well behaved, I think.
Well, yeah, and I must say you are looking pretty fabulous. I mean, we've known each other for quite some time, haven't we? And you look really, really vibrant. So it's obviously working at the moment. And as you say, I think lockdown's probably helped you because it would have been all too easy to have long lunches, wouldn't it? But the pubs were closed.
Absolutely. You tend to say to somebody that you would have said, "Let's go for lunch," you tend to say, "Shall we meet up and go for a walk?" And hopefully some of that will carry on, although I am definitely looking forward to some nice lunches.
Oh, no, me too. I'm with you there. So, I mean, looking back over your career, and you've obviously had a substantial career in the customer service and contact centre industry. I mean, what changes have you observed during those 30 years?
Gosh, I mean, 30 years, wow, it does make you feel old, doesn't it? So much, it's one of those things where you say everything changes, but nothing changes. So some things were a challenge at the start 30 years ago that still remain a challenge in the industry. Industry reputation and staff attrition, recruitment, and all of those things remain the same. I guess overall, I'd say 30 years ago, contact centres, call centres didn't have a great reputation for employment. It was not the place you kind of necessarily want to work, and I think we worked really, really hard to change that and get them to be great places to work. And I think that was a kind of a fundamental change. And also organisations recognising that the contact centre, the call centre could be the heart of everything, that it was certainly the centre of customer insight. That the first point of contact for customers was the contact centre, and therefore that was the best place to focus your efforts and your insight. And that kind of first moment of truth with customers. And then the other thing, of course, is technology. We just had an ACD, and there was, I think the first ACD we implemented was Rockwell, and where are they now? And we thought it was wonderful because it could measure average handling times and all wicked things like that. But technology now is amazing in terms of what's available and what organisations choose to invest in. So I think overall the biggest single change has been that availability of some great solutions, really.
Great. And it's interesting you say about, the contact centre being an environment, where someone wants to work and succeed. And I think, one of my first jobs was at the AA, and I worked in telesales, which was before the call centres started. And then obviously that's where you and I sort of know each other from before this market, don't we, with them, the AA as an industry, and then you helped set up their contact centres, and it all sort of started. But I mean, when I was growing up, there were these graduate training schemes and these opportunities which I had with the AA, and I'm really grateful for. But I don't think a lot of businesses offer those to young people or graduates as much as they did. And I've always said, if you do well in a contact centre, if you work hard, you turn up, you do a good job, the opportunities are endless. And if you look at yourself, me for some example, although I'm not in that sector, but so many of the customer service directors and sort of senior people have come from jobs on the shop, well, not the shop floor, on the sort of call centre floor, haven't they? And you just meet so many of them.
You do. I mean, everybody says, don't they, that they never join the contact centre for a career, and lots of us have really, had a great career. It's an industry that certainly served us really, really well. I think maybe organisations are a bit more alert to that now, and they know kind of where to go to get their next level of talent. And there are some, really good talent management programmes out there. It's still not seen as a career of choice. There's no question of that. But, anyone that I talk to that goes in there, I say, within 12 months, you could easily be a team manager. And, it's not a bad paid job. And you do a good job there, you can be a contact centre manager, and then, you're away, aren't you? We've got some fabulous contact centre managers in the industry. And I think, certainly when you get to that level, you're not leaving, are you?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So, I mean, we might have touched on it, but what do you see as the biggest opportunity in the contact centre sector right now?
So right now, I think the first thing maybe would be to say to organisations, don't screw it up. Lockdown's kind of thrown everything up in the air, and organisations have had to rethink their operating models. And some of them have said, oh, fantastic, we've got the right technology, we can do self-serve, we can do remote working. But there's certainly some organisations out there now, you will have experienced this, Michelle, where you're ringing up and you just can't get through. And they're saying, well, it's due to COVID. And here we are, at least 12 months in. You've got to answer the phone. You've got to be at the end of the web chat. You've got to respond to the email. And I do worry a bit at the moment that some organisations are saying, oh, well, it's the overall experience that matters. Well, of course, I agree with that. But you've got to answer that first response by staffing up well. So I'm a bit nervous about that. So I think the first thing is, we've made so much progress, don't screw it up. The other opportunities, I think, are in that advancement of technology. So a lot of organisations have woken up and gone, cracky, the board kind of came together and went, COVID, what do we do? How do we get remote? And realised that they hadn't got the right technology in place to make some of those things happen. And I think they also kind of realised the absolute value of the frontline advisor, and how well that person's supported, be it remotely or back in the office. So, I guess with contact centres, it's never one thing. Because if you just look after the people, you forget the customers. If you just look after the customers, you forget the people. If you just look after the technology, we know, don't we, that this is an industry where you spin the plates all the time, and you keep going around and spinning the plates. And if you let one plate drop, then all the others come crashing behind, really. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just nervous at the moment that organisations don't go back down that cost-cutting route and say, yeah, we don't need buildings, put everybody at home, get them all task focused, and lose the very heart of the organisation, really.
Yeah, I think the next 12 to 18 months will be a real interesting time. I think if we think the last 12 months have been sort of challenging, I think the next 12 to 18 months will be a lot more sort of test and trial and people trying to find their way, won't it? And as you say, some I think will probably go the other way, and we can't lose that, as you say, that holy trinity really between technology, customers and employees. It needs to be all three equally, doesn't it? When one is too much on one or the other, it all comes out of kilter very quickly, coming off the rails, doesn't it?
It's a three-legged stool. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to people who wanted to progress in the industry? Obviously, you've created your own career path and had all of those fantastic brands that you worked for, which we've discussed. So what advice would you give, Ann-Marie?
I've always been a real advocate for networking, as you know, and that's both internal and external. So and at whatever level you are working in the contact centre, you've got to have really good networks, because the contact centre is usually impacted by what every other department does. So make sure that you've got good relationships with your finance person and your HR person and your technology, and you don't need to be the expert in all of them, but you do need to have the right relationships for those experts. So that's always stood me in really good stead. And then, of course, some people get too internally focused and don't know what's going on in the marketplace. And it can be a lonely role, I think. So, make sure that you do network externally through the various industry bodies like the CCMA that are available. And you've always got somebody that you can go to turn to and say, I've got a problem with this, or what's the best practice or good practice in this area. And, there's a lot of a good community spirit in our industry. You just got to be tapped into it.
Yeah,
and tapped into it all the time, not just when you want something, but you give and take at the same time.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more with this sector. It's so lovely, the camaraderie and the open sort of spirit everyone has. And especially if we think moving forwards, if we do this hybrid flexible working, that isolation will become, it could become even more so, because we're maybe not going out to as many events and you're not seeing as many people, or even your boss and your colleagues and your peers as often. So it's more critical than ever, isn't it?
It is. Our industry knows a lot about home working. It's not new, but it will be new to some organisations. And we know the longevity of it. We know the challenges. We know it's not suited to everybody, and we shouldn't just forget those lessons. Gosh, we were testing home working 25 years ago. It's not that new. So yeah, we should be mindful of all those things that you said and the impact on the people.
Yeah, great. So we do a lot of work around diversity, and obviously diversity is big at the moment. I'd be interested, did you come across any challenges being a woman in senior roles within the industry, Ann-Marie?
She casts her mind back 30 years. I guess, we've all had challenges. For me, I would say nothing too significant to kind of throw me any curveballs. I probably felt the male-female thing more in more junior roles. I certainly never felt that it held me back in any circumstances. I found myself frequently, I guess, being the only woman in a senior team, and that was just commonplace. Less so now, I think, and I think I just kind of got through that. I got through it fine, to be honest, Michelle. But it was very much about being confident in your own judgment and having a voice being the most important thing. I'm a real advocate of equality, whether that's about race, religion, background. Equality is really, really important to me. And so I was never, because it's part of my values, I was never afraid of bringing it out or saying that's not acceptable. And so, it's just really, really important to have a voice. And sometimes that voice needs to be a little bit louder in certain circumstances. So I would always say, make sure that you call things out. I've had situations where somebody's tried to bully me, and I won't accept that, and I did not accept that at the time, and that's an example of calling things out really and saying, I won't accept the way that you treat me, whether that's harassment or bullying or anything like that. Don't be the person that says this is acceptable, I'm going to go quietly. And I guess that means not just looking out for yourself, but as a leader, you look out for others. Mm-hmm. And you have to call things out, whether they affect you or not, and say that's unacceptable behaviour in this in life. But in this moment, in this organisation, I'm not tolerating that, and I will not let you get away with that behaviour. You have to be true to yourself, and when you've done that, and there are times when you need a lot of reflection and you have to be brave, but you just have to do it. And I always used to say to people, never be frightened of difficult conversations, ever. If you know that you need to have a difficult conversation, you need to do it. Don't avoid it, you'll regret it later. Be confident in your own beliefs, really.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing. And I think that self-belief and that confidence is key, isn't it? I think for all of us, you can quickly believe that, it doesn't matter who you are, as you say, whether you're male, female, or any sort of race. If you don't believe in yourself, or you think that you haven't got a voice that's worthy of being heard, then it holds you back, doesn't it? We do so much damage to ourselves as well, often. So starting with that belief and that confidence. But thanks for sharing. Great. So what about your biggest career break then? Who or what do you have to thank for it?
So I guess I go back to having a great network. Having good relationships with people always makes a big difference. I've had some really great roles. I've had some really great bosses. I've had some really tough roles and tough bosses. And you always try and learn something from your seniors, don't you? And I guess I discovered that you can learn a lot from a bad boss as much as a good boss, maybe more. You can observe something happening, you can observe the behaviour and think, I never want to be that type of boss. So I'm not going to name names, but we've all had some bosses that you've worked for where you thought, I'll never do that, I'll never be that person. But I have been lucky because I've always worked for good, strong brands, and therefore, the right supporting structures have been in place. And I was just always lucky, I think, with my moves when I decided to move organisations. But I guess the other thing I'd say is, having just said I've been lucky, it's not really, some of it is luck, but you can't just lean on your personality. You've got to deliver. Yeah. When we do the judging for the European awards and the UK awards each year, we meet a lot of people, and when we say, what's your key strength? If we had a pet hound, for every time they say, I'm a real people person, and I want to say to them, that's great and it's really important, but do you know what? It's not enough. You have to be a rounded individual. You have to have the rounded skill set, because you're not really a people person unless you, in a senior role, equip yourself with all the right skills to make sure that you create the right environment for those people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you've got to be a good planner, you've got to be a good organiser, you've got to be tough, you've got to be prepared to go in and negotiate and debate and fight for your people. You've got to understand planning, you've got to understand budget. They're not necessarily skills that you'd associate with a people person, but fundamentally they are. I put all those things first so that they enabled me to create a brilliant working environment for the teams that work beneath me. So yeah, I think I've had a fantastic career. I will never ever have a job that I loved as much as running the CCMA. Ever. I'd loved working for myself, but yeah, I've had a wonderful career. This industry's been very good to me.
Yeah, and you make your own luck as well, don't you? Ultimately, I mean, there are people who, we can consider who are more lucky than others, but it's creating or making the most of those opportunities around you, isn't it? And seeing them and sort of taking them. And I know that you've done that many a time. And even when you look at the exes, they'd lost their way, hadn't they?
Yes.
And they were in a pretty dire state when you took them over. And what you've achieved, and you and your team achieved over those 6 years, it's just an amazing awards event, as we know, and that's just one small thing. You've done quite a lot of that throughout your career, haven't you?
Thank you.
So what's next then? Have we seen the last of Ann-Marie Stagg, or are you likely to pop up again?
Do you know, as I said, like running the CCMA was wonderful. I just loved it. It suited me. I loved every minute of it. And so, where do you go from there, Michelle? I'd safely say that I've retired. Will I pop up again? I'm sure I'll stay reasonably close to the industry for things like judging, or wherever I can help. I'm doing a bit of mentoring with people. But I couldn't go and work for somebody else again now. That would just be awful. And I don't want to, I will watch the CCMA and offer them as much support as they need, because my heart, is there. I, built it and turned it into, an amazing organisation, and the guys are doing fantastically. He's doing such a great job with it now. I'll always be there to support those guys. But my headset is firmly hung up.
So we're coming out of lockdown, and you obviously mentioned how much you want to travel. So, I mean, before we finish, do you have a favourite travel destination? Have you been there yet, or do you want to go, and why? Yeah. Why might that be?
Yeah, I've been lucky in recent years, travelling quite far and wide. So my next trip, whenever it actually happens, it keeps getting delayed, is a trip to the Arctic. I have a bear thing going on. So I've done black bears, I've done grizzly bears, polar bears. Sorry, not polar bears, pandas. So I went to China not long before the lockdown and did the whole panda thing. So polar bears is next. My dream holiday was Canada, going really into in the middle of nowhere for 3 days, and doing literally searching out for grizzlies, not to shoot them. To kill my reputation there. So yeah, I kind of quite like those holidays that little bit different. The real experience, lying on a beach and sunbathing is kind of not really my thing anymore. It's getting out there and seeing life, really.
Yeah, fabulous. Well, great. Thanks for sharing. And I've just got one final question for you before I let you go. Obviously, you've known myself and the brand Douglas Jackson for quite some time. I mean, what's your perception of the business and the brand, Ann-Marie?
Michelle, I love your organisation, and the amount of people that I've pushed kind of in your direction. So whenever anybody's either looking for a role or looking to fill a role, then I've always recommended yourself and Douglas Jackson, because you don't put people through a sausage machine. You understand the industry so well. As you said, you were there in the telesales departments at the AA all those years ago, but worked your way through all those roles. So you understand the industry really well, and you have a level of honesty. So I think you're really honest with candidates and also people looking to fill roles about, where they'll find the right person, if they find the right person, have they pitched it right. And that integrity is really important to people. When you're out of work looking for a role, it's so tough. And they just want to be treated as individuals. So that personal service, you care. I know you and all your guys, they really care, and they stay in touch with people, and you hold their hand through it. And then I know you don't see them again. They're off, they've got their role, and that's fine. And you get that, and you understand, place them, keep the relationship going as best as possible. But it can be a thankless task, and I know that you put all your care and attention around people. And so I have never hesitated ever in recommending your organisation. So, 5 stars for me, Michelle.
Oh, thank you. That's lovely. Thanks very much for saying that. Well, it's been lovely to meet you today anyway. Thank you for spending the time with us, and all the best with your retirement and your healthy living and travels. I hope you find those polar bears.
Yes, I hope so. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you.